All right. I just woke up. I finished this book last night at like 3 a.m. I was gonna review last night, but I couldn't. I was falling asleep. I read Twilight. Something I never thought I was gonna say. But I am now 17. So I am the target audience for this book. So I read it. Let me just explain. I like Twilight. Like I liked it. I gave it 4.5 stars. Maybe that'll change. I feel like it's not worthy of 5 stars. I mean, there's some things that I don't like, but it's not like crazy where I'm like gonna give it 3 stars. But it's not like crazy good when I'm gonna give it 5 stars. It was good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the read. I have to admit it, because I was like ashamed of it. And I think nobody should be ashamed of liking whatever they want. People kind of like whatever they want. And I like Twilight. Twilight is a book. It's a paranormal romance book. Yes. It tells the story of Bella, Bella Swan. She moves from Phoenix to Forks in Washington. Her parents are separated and she's gonna live with her dad. And she's not excited about it, but she's doing it herself because she cares for her mom so much. So she moves with her dad. And she doesn't like the place because it always rains, and she likes the sun, and she likes the weather. And that's one thing that I liked about this book was I like that gloomy weather. I would love to live in a place where it rained a lot. I know it sounds so odd. A lot of people wouldn't like that, but I like it. I enjoy it. I enjoy the cold weather. Basically, Bella just obsesses over this dude. That's basically the plot. She obsesses over this guy who's a vampire, and they fall deeply in love. Let's go into characters and what I liked and what I didn't like, and then I'll go into spoilers at the end. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like anyone too much, where I was like, oh, I'm so attached. Not really. I was never attached to Bella, and 500 pages, I was following her voice and her mind. I never liked her one bit. I think she's the one I'd at least like. She's so problematic and whiny, but we'll talk about that in a second. I think the one that I like the most are probably Charlie. I mean, Charlie is Bella's dad, by the way. But Charlie is so funny and caring, and he really tries to accept anything that his daughter wishes, because he's always been alone his whole life. Bella's mom left with Bella when Bella was a baby. She left. She didn't want to be with Charlie because she didn't want to be stuck in that town. So Charlie wants to really take care of Bella and like just give her a good life now that she's taken a chance to live there. So I really like him. I didn't like Bella. She's really whiny and mean. I'll go into her in a second because it's a lot. I think another character I liked was Edward in this book. I like him. I know a lot of people say that things change in the other books and you will change your favorite characters all the time. Probably. I'm probably gonna change characters. But for now, the whole book overall, I liked Edward. I didn't like love him. I wasn't like, oh my god. Like, no, I liked him. I mean, he was really funny and he was really chill. And it was really cool to see like how chill he was compared to like Bella being like all weird and whiny. But I liked him. I think the book was focused so much on Bella and Edward, like completely. Even until the end, I mean, we're following Bella and she's in love with this guy. So even because of the circumstances at the end, she's still thinking about Edward, and still the book is overall very centered on Edward and Bella. That's why I said it was romance heavy. Okay, things that I liked. The story. I liked the romance. I liked the climax, and I liked the way it built up to the climax. Like everything was just lined up perfectly. It felt natural. It was fine. And things that I didn't like. Okay, it's really hard to go into depth with books without spoiling, because I have a lot of thoughts of like the plot, and obviously there's like a bunch of spoilers and people have boundaries with like what they want to know and what they don't want to know. I will just say that there's some problematic things in this book, not too many. I mean, things have changed, times have changed, and there's like 2 little problematic things, but it wasn't problematic where I was like, I'm gonna stop reading the book now. Like, I can't. That's super problematic. No. I was just laughing. And I was like, that's really subjective. If you haven't read the book, and if you want to read the book, so I doubt if you're watching this, you haven't read the book. You either read the book and loved it, read the book and hated it, or read the book and hated it, or watch the movies and love them. Haven't read the book and you want to read them, then go away. Or if you haven't read the book, haven't watched the movies, you're not interested, but you want to keep watching, go ahead and watch. Or if you read the book and you didn't like it, you can also say, I'm going to talk about all the things with spoilers. All right.
Spoilers. I'm gonna start with spoilers now.
As I said, I liked the pace. The pace was really nice. I never felt like it was dragging. I was mostly like 90% of the time hooked. There was a 10% where I was definitely not hooked. And it wasn't for a specific reason. It was just the tone of the whole moment. It was so slow and weird, and like I was so like I wanted to like close the book and sleep because I literally wasn't like into that part. And that's the scene where Edward takes Bella to the meadow with flowers, and he shows her how he shines in the sunlight, and they like lay down and literally talk for like hours and hours. That scene dragged, and I think it was a bummer because I wanted to feel things in that scene. I know people felt things. I know the whole Shining Edward thing was like a whole deal, obviously. So I wanted to feel things. I was excited to feel like, well, I didn't feel anything. I was like, it was dragging. I was just there like, what's going on? And they were just talking and talking and talking. I barely remember anything of that. I remember that he shined and he kept like standing up and like running like around, being like, I can't. That's all I remember. I think it was dragging so much in that moment. It was like 10% of the book, and then the rest of it was amazing to me. I just really enjoyed it, like for real. Let's talk a little bit about the romantic scenes. Edward is literally like, he suffers when they kiss. He suffers. He's like, oh, and Bella's like, I'm sorry, but you're so hot. And it's really bad. At first, I was cringing. I was cringing so bad. I was like, I don't like it. And then I started getting used to it, and I was like, you know what? It's kind of cute. It's a little cute. That whole scene where they cuddle in Bella's bed, which I thought I was gonna cringe so bad when I saw they were gonna do that, but I didn't. I was like, aw, they were cute. They had such a natural little like romance. No, don't get me wrong. I said I like the romance, but what the is Bella doing? Implying marriage right like minutes after their first kiss. Bella is asking Edward about marriage and vampires and stuff, and then Bella's like,
Oh, and do you think you and I could ever get married?
and he's like,
Lol, no.
and he straight up says no, because he's like, I'm too dangerous for you. I could like easily break your head without even noticing. She's like, I would take the chance. Like this just she's just implied to get married. They just kissed for the first time, and now she's getting like, she's like, oh, you want to get married? Like, think about it in real life. Isn't that scary? And shortly after that, she says,
I love you.
the magical words of I love you. And then when she first says it, it's kind of like, but she already implied marriage. So, whatever. Let's talk about Bella a little bit. Bella is boring. And she says, I'm boring. And Bella, you know what? You are boring. Like, there's nothing to you. Like, she reads, yeah, cool. Like me, cool. But she's like, oh, I'm boring. And once Edward comes into her life, it's all she thinks about. She's like, it's Edward. He's my life now. Like, he's all I think about. She doesn't care about school. She doesn't care about her friends. What happened to Jessica? I love her. I love Jessica. And Jessica's like always with like Bella. She's like, girl, I got you, bro. And Bella's like, yeah. I like to be alone. It's just weird. It's the whole thing with Bella. Bella's always complaining. Always. And she's narrating the book. So let me just say, she's not only complaining dialogue, like in a dialogue way. She's complaining all the time. Even at the end of the book, where I thought she wasn't gonna complain at all, because she just got saved. Like, her life was saved. Edward sucked all the venom from James's bite and saved her life. And she's mad at Edward because he didn't let her transform into a vampire. She's like, why didn't you let me? I I would just be a vampire by now. And he's like, I don't want you to be a vampire. That sucks. And she's like,
No, it doesn't.
and the last page of the book is Edward being like, you want me to bite you? And she's like, yes, please, please. And she's like, oh my god, he's gonna bite me, he's gonna bite me. And he kisses her neck. He's like, psych. I'm not gonna bite you. Yeah, Bella, I didn't like her. I'm gonna talk about something I just remembered. She's problematic. This is page 149, and it's chapter 7, Nightmare. This is context of what's happening. Bella is talking to Charlie, her dad, and she's saying, my friends Jessica and Angela, we're gonna go down to Port Angeles, and we're gonna go buy dresses for that dance they're having, which she's not going to. And he's like, are you going to the dance? And she's like, no. And he's like, why are you going then? Are you gonna get a dress? And she's like, no, I'm just gonna go help them find dresses, like critique. And he's like, oh. And then you know what she says?
Like, no, Dad, but I'm helping them find dresses.
And then it says, I wouldn't have to explain this to a woman. Now, let's talk about this. Obviously, this is super wrong now we think about it. She's saying that she wouldn't have to explain the concept of critiquing or helping find a dress with your friends. She wouldn't have to explain this to a woman. Like, she's saying all women would be like, oh, I understand. Like, I understand what you mean. Because, we wear dresses. But now, everybody can wear a dress. Whoever wants to wear a dress, wear a dress. You're good. Maybe, Bella, you wouldn't have to explain this to me. I would understand what you're trying to say. But I'm not a woman. And I wrote down, that's subjective. That's a little stereotypical if you ask me. It is. That was one of the only problematic things I saw. Let me just close the book. I really liked the tone of the book. I loved the descriptions that Stephanie Meyer created for us, the readers. I've never been to Forks, and even though I've watched the movies, this book gave me so much the sense of the place where we're at. Stephanie Meyer is really good at creating a setting. She's really good at creating the setting, being like, okay, this is what's happening, and this is what it looks like, and it's beautiful. She's really poetic, and I love when authors are poetic, and I love when they combine poetry with simple books like this. I love poetic stuff, and I love things that are like really symbolize something so cool. So I loved Stephanie Meyer's writing when it came to describing the world and the weather. The weather felt so real. Like, everything was really cool, really solid. I like that. I think it's really strong. I think Stephanie Meyer is really good at that. I think the thing that she's least good at is dialogue. The dialogue in this book felt really weak. It was really, how do I put it? Kind of robotic in a way, but also really colloquial, which, like, it's fine to an extent, but sometimes it just becomes so colloquial that it's not even possible to believe that this is really happening. It's like, oh, like, nobody would say that, like, it's like, which is, like, not that bad. I'm not saying that the dialogue was super bad. I'm just saying there were parts where the dialogue was, like, weird. But that was, like, all. I wasn't, like, too bothered by it. It just felt like that a little bit. One thing that I really enjoyed that was actually surprising, I wasn't expecting to enjoy this if it was here, and I wasn't expecting it to be here at all. There's a lot of history of vampires, and I liked that we explored that in this book. Like, I thought we were gonna explore that in the following books, but we explore that here. Like, we explore Carlisle's life. Like, he was born in the 1600s, and he's a witch hunter and a vampire hunter, and he gets bitten by a vampire. He gets attacked by a vampire, and obviously he tries to kill himself, and then he can't kill himself because he's too strong, because he's a vampire. He's becoming a vampire, and then he learns that he can feed himself and satisfy his needs by only eating animals, and that's how his animal blood. And I think that's how his, like, whole theory of, like, being a vegetarian, kind of like eating only animal blood and not human blood, came to be. So I like that. I like the whole story of Carlisle and Esme, how it's really sad. She lost her baby and she tried to kill herself, and she was saved. And also Edward's story, like, everything was so easy to understand and simple and clear And it wasn't like dragging, like, oh, this was back then, and like a big flashback. No, it was like someone telling a story. It was Edward telling Bella a story, but it was so picturable. I don't know if that's a word. I could picture it really well in my head, and everything was really clear and quick, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the history. Now, there's a thing that I never, ever, 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 ever like thought about when I was younger, and is Alice. Alice, I like her character. Her character has this past that I didn't get until the end, because you don't understand it until the end. Throughout the whole book, Edward just tells Bella Alice just doesn't remember anything about her human life. She doesn't remember anything at all. She is, and Alice, let's just think. Alice is this like really floaty girl. She has like a pixie hairstyle, like bobbed hair, you know. She's really bouncy, you know. She's very bouncy, but she doesn't remember anything about her life as a human, unlike the rest of them. They all remember how they turned. At least Carlisle, Edward, and Esme, I think. But Alice doesn't remember at all. And as we know, Alice has a special ability, which her special ability is kind of like foreseeing a possible future. That's something that I didn't understand when I was a kid and watched the movies. I thought she saw the future, the definite future, and I didn't really capture why the future changed. Because mostly in books and movies you would read and like see that people would be like, oh, you can't change fate, like you can't change the future. Here, it's very natural. I liked it because it's like the future can change. Like, this is what might happen, but the future can change. And that's basically her whole ability. And after exploring all of that, at the end, when James is torturing Bella, right before James tortures Bella, he tells her about a vampire that like a story that he lived. He was living in the 1920s. James, which is a villain of this book, and he was living in the 1920s, and he talks about this girl, and Bella immediately realizes, oh my god, it's Alice. And I was like, Alice, because she says Alice. I breathed, astonished, and then I was like, what? And then I had to go back and read again the story, and it all clicked, and I wrote it all down here. This is what I wrote down. Oh my god, that explains why she can't remember her time being human, because she was in an asylum, and they shocked her. So basically, Alice's past life, she lived in an asylum around the 1920s, and she was shocked because she claimed that she had these visions. She could see kind of like visions, and she would claim that. And obviously in the 1920s, that was insane. So they put her in an asylum, and they shocked her. And because it was so dark in the room when she got transformed and she was dazed, she doesn't remember anything of her becoming a vampire. And I thought that was so well thought and creative. And then she was there because she had visions, which, like Edward said, carried to her vampire life. That's why she acts the way she does. She's all gloomy and she's not gloomy. She's the opposite of gloomy. She's all bouncy and floating. And she's like always like, oh, I'm so happy, because she's probably like the attribute of like the medicine and stuff. And one more thing that I immediately came into realization: 1920s bobbed pitsy hairstyle. In the 1920s, it was a revolutionary era for girls, and they started wearing their hair like short, bobbed, just like Alice. And that's something that I was really enjoying. All the history of the characters, that is something that I really enjoyed of the book. It was like a little extra detail. We got out of the romance and stuff, and we really got into like the history and what was going on. I really, really like that. I was really liking that. I think that's it. I mean, this video is almost 1 hour long, and I'm gonna have to edit a bunch. I enjoyed the book. 4.5 stars. Those 5 stars missing are probably because of the problematic parts, and that 10% that dragged at the middle. That's all. That's all that I thought was like really, really like ugh. The rest of it I enjoyed. But yeah, thank you.
And so the lion fell in love with the lamb.